We're live.
Are we rolling? Well, everyone, welcome back to episode 4 of the Ryan Ripken Show. A little bit different because just life comes up, space, things happen. So live from DC, and Brad, where even the hell are you?
In North Carolina.
Well, there you go. Well, hey, it's good to see you. Wish we could be together. Your camera makes me look and sound way better for the most part. But how are we feeling overall? I know you've had a lot of driving today.
Yeah, doing pretty good and feeling good and yeah, I'm ready to get the show on the road. Let's do it, man.
And for everyone last week, and Lisa brings up the point, asked me how the wedding. My sister got married last week, so it was great. Turned out really well. So I apologize for me. I like to be able to do this all the time, and we're going to be able to be more consistent. Actually, I have a few things we'll explain here coming up, but family to me still matters the most. So to be able to do that, I gotta do that. Brad's the same way. We're
Yep.
family guys at heart. So
yep. Looking forward to what we have coming up for the show too, man. We're not gonna let you guys know what we're going to be at yet. That is coming, but we got some big news coming up and feeling really good about where we're headed for as far as the show's concerned. Obviously, you guys know that Ryan has an affiliate with a particular restaurant, but we have another establishment on the way, and I'm super pumped about it.
Yeah, and that's going to give the chance. Again, this is the only information we're going to give away here, at least in the Baltimore region, is that for just say an Orioles experience, you're going to have a chance to be able to watch and be live with us. We'll put it at that. And that could turn into something that's a lot more consistent. And we got something else to tease at the end with the other restaurant that I've been doing a lot of business with, the Iron Rooster. Something else is in the works there too. So, but I got to keep you guys on your toes just a little bit. So let's give you an idea of what we're getting into today, shall we? So
let's do it.
Yeah, let's rock it. So here we go. Number 1, if I can find the right tab. So we're going to get a little bit of the Hear Me Out segment. We still are looking for people on their thoughts. Hear Me Out doesn't have to be sports related. Brad and I are going to run through our Hear Me Outs for the week. We're going to talk about the Orioles recapping the series today with the Toronto Blue Jays. O's take 3 of 4 on the road. And you would have thought that one game, the whole world ended. But guess what? The world still spins. We might have a special guest here. Kind of depends on time constraints. So we don't want to give much away, but that would tie into a lot of things that are going on that have happened in Major League Baseball and upcoming in future series. I'm going to talk a little bit NFL because we're right around the corner there, mixing a little bit of fantasy football to that. Obviously, we're keeping love to see it, hate to see it. And then we're going to close it out with grinds our gears. Oh, words are hard for me today, Brad. Did I miss anything?
It's all good. No, man, you did a great job running it down. Let's go ahead and get into Hear Me Out. What do you say?
Yeah, please. You're the Hear Me Out guy. So without further ado,
let's do it. So obviously there's been a lot of big blockbuster trades that were made. Max Scherzer now no longer with the Mets, and neither is Justin Verlander, which I think brings me to my biggest Hear Me Out. Now, hear me out.
Okay.
The Astros are overrated in a sense that the rest of the world thinks that they are favored to go on and actually win a World Series this year. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Astros are terrible. Obviously not. Their record, obviously is very good. They now have Justin Verlander, whose ERA is 3.15. They already had a 3.77 ERA as a team. And so obviously that makes them really damn good at pitching. And so one would probably assume that perhaps they're the favorite to go to the World Series, but I think they're overrated in a sense of they still have a pretty sizable losing record against the AL East. And we have obviously we're going to see that series shape up against the Orioles coming up here. So I'm super pumped about that to see where that goes. But there's a couple of things that I feel like there's flaws in this argument that the Astros are just a lock to win it. They're favored to win it. I think that to say that it's just a bit egregious. I mean, we look at the their record versus the AL Central, as far as the Astros are concerned this year, they're 11-11 against the AL Central, which we already know isn't a great division, right? They're 2-4 versus the Twins, who are probably going to be in the playoffs. I will say that they are 6-4 against the Rangers, which is kind of interesting. First place Rangers there. Their batting average, let's just compare some stats here. The batting average to the Orioles, 250 to 252. Orioles have 252. 138 to 126 total home runs. OPS is very interesting too. It's very tight. 736 OPS for the team as far as the Astros are concerned. Orioles are at 740. 928 hits that the Orioles have. This is, I think, to just say that the Astros are just all out favored, I just think is a bit much. So you look at their record against the AL East, as I mentioned, is 6-7. But we even look at something like the Rays that are 16-4 against the AL Central and 11-11 versus the AL West. So you have other teams in here that I think are just pretty damn good. And I would say that to say that they're just favored as the sole, winner of the AL American League, I think I just don't think that pundits are giving the AL East enough credit. I mean, it's a tough league, and to looking at the Orioles that are 24-14 against the AL East. I mean, I don't know. I know I'm biased, right? But I just feel like we're not getting enough love this year.
Hey, the bias is there. You know what? I started to laugh a little bit. I didn't know how bold you're going to go there. Because I will say this, because Astros, to me, it's that one team so far this year. Is it fair to say the Rangers got all the talk, and then the Astros are kind of slumping? Then you look at the standings right now over there. By the way, the Stros are one game back, so all the good that the Rangers have done, the Astros are right on their heels. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And I appreciate your take and the American League East, and what's happened so far has been pretty remarkable, to say the least. Division as a whole, let's not even talk about the Orioles yet, because we got a lot to talk about with them. They deserve it because they are the best team in the American League right now. All right, hear me out. It has to do with the trade deadline. Has to do with everything what happened. I really feel that we've seen a lot of moves go and people being frustrated, not enough, we don't have enough pitching the Orioles didn't get, or teams didn't make enough moves. Not just the Orioles, just everybody. Everyone's getting trashed once in a while. So hear me out with this. You're damn if you do, and you're damn if you don't. And what I mean by that is either way, someone's going to be upset. And I think you got to live with it. And it doesn't mean when you make trades that it's always going to work out in your favor. On paper, getting Max Scherzer, getting Justin Verlander, yeah, that looks really good. But the point that I want to make for this, even though you want a frontline, quote unquote, ace, if that was the case last year, then the Mets would have never fallen apart and lost in the first round to the Padres, having those quote unquote studs for arms. So far, another big move that happened, Lucas Giolito went to the Angels, and Gio's a great pitcher. He got rocked in his first outing. And I'm not saying it's one outing, but you can go right on. Everyone was applauding the Angels then if they were going to go all in. Why didn't the Orioles, or why didn't someone else get him? And then all of a sudden, he has a bad outing, and someone goes, well, maybe was that not worth it? Again, I'm not one to jump to conclusions early, but my point is, in today's day and age, we are so quick to jump on something. And I mean, literally jump on something. The Orioles lost one game in Toronto, which we're about to get into here. And you really would have thought that they were the Oakland A's of the season. So we got to keep a level head here. And no matter what happens, you got to ride it out and see. So that's my hear me out. It's always damn if you do, damn if you don't. And it's just going to drive yourself crazy, because moving into then, I think we're going to hear me out. It's a great team to recap into it. The Orioles just went to Toronto, and Brad, what they've done all season to the Blue Jays, they just have completely dominated them, and they're leaving Toronto feeling even better about themselves than when they got to Canada.
Yeah. Why does Mountcastle own them so much? What is with that?
There's three things you can count on in this world, ladies and gentlemen: death, taxes and Ryan Mountcastle is going to smack the shit out of the ball against the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, there's something. Everyone has that team, Brad. I'm going to be honest. Everyone has that team where you get confidence and then you cannot wait to face them again. That's Mountie for the Blue Jays.
It's just funny, like listening to some of the color commentators like I have Sirius, so like listen to some of the color commentators from by the way, Caleb Joseph is a color commentator for the Toronto Blue Jays, which I didn't realize. But to hear them talk about Mountie and how he just I said something along the lines of he might as well get a passport or citizenship in Toronto the way that he's been just living in Toronto. So it's pretty fascinating stuff. He went 3 for 3 today and almost had a damn near perfect series against the Blue Jays, and the see some of the Blue Jay fans on Twitter just hating on Mountie, which deservedly so if you're a Blue Jays fan, but man, it's just funny to see.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing here is too, for all the talk about Ryan Mountcastle, what's going to happen with this lineup, and people wondering why didn't the Orioles, for some that say they need a bat. This offense is tremendous. I don't know where this talk is. If you look, and it's a good problem that they have. I mean, you can look around other teams that are really lacking depth. You want to look at teams that are struggling offensively, hence teams in your division like the New York Yankees, where it just feels like things aren't going right. Ryan Mountcastle, clearly the vertigo was a problem for him. And I've said in the past, pure hitter wise, Mountie's just as good of a pure hitter as anybody in the league. The biggest thing that people got on him was, you don't walk enough. You don't get on base enough. When he's on, he can carry a team. And I know it's the Oakland A's and people were like, that's not a real baseball team. First off, I hate that, by the way. Major league teams, they're all really good. Even the really bad teams, it's bad. I'm not going to say they aren't bad, but come on, still give them credit. Mountie had 9 ribbies against them, 3 jacks. The dude can play. And this offense just found ways to get things done. And I think what makes them great, Brad, so far, before we get into Flaherty, because there's a trade piece that everyone was kind of up and down over. This offense proved that 1 through 9, they can go out there and put up some numbers. And they did in Toronto for that series. And the Orioles, again, I don't think a lot of teams want to face this lineup right now because there's a lot of confidence.
Yeah, agreed. And it's the thing of it is they're finding ways to win. Even with their 1-run games, close games, they're winning the games they're supposed to. And then some of the games that people would expect them not to. So it's been pretty awesome to see. Obviously, them not getting swept since last year is still going to be a talking point. But man, yeah, they're a scary team for sure. Yeah,
and the other part then, the arm that they added, little Jack Flaherty.
Yeah, let's chat about that a little bit. Guy had an outing today. First game, maybe he just had the adrenaline pumping. Who knows? But man, he put down 15 straight, got the bases loaded in the 6th inning today. Got himself out of that jam as well. So just really great outing. I think he had 1 earned run today. I mean, you can't ask for much more. I mean, obviously it's only 1 game, but you got to wonder if perhaps Mike Elias actually knew what he was doing.
Well, and I think that you got to give credit to Elias. And also, I try to give my perspectives on it. I don't try to fluff anything up like I've told you. I really like the move when they made it. Because if you go back, when you get guys that have the ability to be elite, and even if they haven't shown it so far as much this season, or consistency has been an issue, it's not for lack of talent. Like we talked about Fujinami, which we'll dive into next. But yes, Flaherty has the ability to dominate. And I tweeted that out the other day. If you want to go back to he was a Cy Young candidate at age 23. He's 27, by the way. So he's right in his prime. Mm-hmm. And Flaherty goes out there. And also, sorry, I'm going to go back to that year. He had 196 innings on the year and 231 punch outs and a 2.75 ERA. So if I can do the math there, that's pretty damn good. That's pretty elite to me. Under 3 and you're K'ing that many guys. So it's there. And then you got to factor this part in when you're on a team where there's so many issues that have happened so far, and the Cardinals have been a wreck for the majority of the season. Sometimes you need that fresh start. So for Flaherty, it seems like this could be the best opportunity. And quite frankly, he could be the guy that, compared to what other teams gave up, Flaherty could end up being this piece that everyone might not think at the moment, but he can go out there and win a lot of ball games for the team. And also, you mentioned the jam in the sixth, like that, to get out of that. That's big league right there. That's the ability to pitch out of jams, the ability to handle high pressure, high intensity division game. They could have easily, the Blue Jays gotten back into it, limited to 1 run. That was a really, to me, a masterful first outing for Flaherty, showing everything that he's capable of doing.
Agreed. If you guys didn't catch that, Flaherty loaded the bases with 1 out and shut it down. Got one strikeout and 1 fly out to center, and that was it. So like it was just great, and I think it's just one of those things where you look at it and we needed somebody to be a veteran out there. And I think that certainly fills that void. What I would also say is, the Orioles didn't have to give up the farm to get a decent arm. And hey, look, the team is better now than they were before the trade deadline. And you could be a Yankees fan or a Red Sox fan that just sat back and did nothing. So at least the Orioles made an effort to get better, and I think that they did. But that it's kind of interesting, right? You got Aaron Judge, and that's kind of it. If I was any team playing the Yankees right now, I'm just walking Aaron Judge every time, because they don't have any hitters on the rest of the roster at this point, unless somehow they get out of their slumps.
Yeah, I mean, but that's and it's a good point. And I think people need to realize this, is that the Orioles' depth is now showing. And that's why when people complain about the lineups, look who do they put in and look who's having production from the 1 spot to the 9 hole. There were some days that, and it's not happening as much, but Gunnar Henderson was hitting in the 7 hole. I mean, imagine that's the depth of the lineup that they have. Obviously, Gunnar, that's going off of facing a lefty and whatnot. But man, when you're able to consistently put that type of pressure on a pitching staff, it's going to do you some great things. And so far, it's been great for the Orioles. I know that a big question, I saw that Greg would talk about, I would have liked to see the Orioles get another bullpen arm. Understandably so. And that's always a concern. You want to have your bullpen down the stretch. And I know everyone's talking about with Fuji here. Yesterday was not his best outing, Brad.
No, he allowed 3 runs, hit 2 batters in a row. Before that, walked a batter. It was pretty ugly.
Yeah, I mean, for him, and those runs got charged to Grayson, who, by the way, Grayson, for those that have watched, has looked great coming up there. And the biggest thing for me that I've seen, he's using that heater to his advantage. He's challenging guys, and not that he wasn't on a mission before, but he seems even more determined at this point in time. So people don't worry about him. He's going to be just fine. For Fuji, he even said after the game that he felt a little bit pressured, that he didn't want to mess up, and that he was, and in those cases, how many times when you tell yourself, I don't want to mess up, and you say it,
and then you do,
and then you go and you mess up.
Right.
And you're like, shit, this sucks. That to me is what I saw. I saw him tense up in those moments. But again, you just got to wash it. But he is going to have to get used to those opportunities, because if the Orioles, they acquired him, they had the hopes of him being one of these big arms down the stretch, and he needs to get more comfortable in some very high strenuous situations.
Agreed, especially going down into postseason, right? I mean, that's going to be way more pressure than a Blue Jays game. So I think we'll see how it all shakes out. But I mean, obviously the guy's splitter is pretty ugly. It's really, really tough against batters. And I think really just kind of comes down to that command against the fastball. That's really what got him in trouble yesterday, was the fastball. He just kept, beating guys thrown inside, and he was a little bit all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, really, he even got up in the count and then drilled the guy, pitch gets away. Yeah. But that's the thing, is his stuff is woof. I mean, you see how devastating a fastball splitter combination can be. Why? Because Felix Bautista does it to everybody all the time. Now, Felix has certain analytics that make Felix near impossible to hit. And yeah, I'm going to beat the drum again. Dude needs to be in the AL Cy Young conversation. I don't care if he's a reliever. Bautista needs to be in it because he's been that dominant. I digress. Fuji, though, has that ability. And you saw the other night when it was Sunday Night Baseball, he looked dominant. The thing is for him is just, can you consistently put that out each and every outing? If he does that, I think the Orioles will be okay. And I do think, and I'm seeing about with DL Hall, I hope the DL Hall's in the mix, but it's going to come down the same thing as what's your confidence level with a guy that hasn't been there. Personally, to me, I see Wells and John Means. Hopefully Means is everything's moving right. Wells and Means could be the two guys in the equation to help down the stretch, because I think Wells is going to move more to a relief role because of a innings limit.
Agreed.
That's all you got for me is agreed?
Sorry. I wasn't I was trying to figure out the next part of the show. I was getting.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with you. You know, that's the thing is that's why I miss being in person with you, because then I can kind of just rag on you there and just talk shit, and it's great. To Lisa's
we
point,
need a producer.
We do. We're working on it. But Lisa's question is Felix underrated. I mean, I don't know if people are talking about him enough.
Yeah.
But if you're not, I don't know what to tell you. There hasn't been a better reliever in all of baseball since May 25th. Really hasn't. He's won the reliever of the month in the AL 3 out of the 4 months. Devastating, a guy you can count on. I mean, you want to look right now, he's on pace. Eric Gagne is the last reliever that won it in 2003. Batista's on pace to break that. So that just gives you context of how dominant he's been. So hoping, praying, but the Orioles here get a really big series win, and now it's a reunion coming up with Buck Showalter and the Mets. And I feel for Buck. I really do. It is when it rains and pours in New York. And unfortunately for him, it's not looking like it's going to be an ideal season for those New York Mets.
And like with Ryan Cohen having all that money, you got to think that, like, is this just going to be his way of doing business, I guess, with the team, right? Like, I mean, he just goes out and spends a bunch of money, tries to put together a team that way. Or, I mean, he basically has unlimited money as far as in baseball terms. Do you think that that's just going to be his way to try to get a winning strategy, just to keep trying to buy a team, or do you think he's going to eventually get into, growing his farm system too?
Well, I think that was kind of the move when they said, "Hey, Justin, are you thinking about going somewhere?" And same with Scherzer. Hey, we're thinking about. And Scherzer even came out. I don't know if people saw that. He might have spilled the tea on that the GM for the Mets, saying that they're looking at 2025 now. And so if you're thinking about 2025, you're trying to build up that system. And they got a great return, Verlander for Verlander. They have top 2 prospects for the Astros. And actually, Brad, this is for us. Looks like we will be having our guest around 8 p.m. So Perfect. For those, stay tuned, because we're going to talk a lot more about that specifically with our guest. And but yeah, I think that the Mets, though, every team, if you look at it, they have to have somewhat of a good farm system. You have to. I mean, the Tampa Bay Rays, they don't spend a lot of money. They've had the 4th most wins in Major League Baseball since 2010. Then on the flip side, the Dodgers spend a lot of money. But they still do develop players really well in Los Angeles. So the Yankees have the same thing. The Yankees spend a lot of money, but before they'd have these arms that come out there. And believe me, I got to see them firsthand coming up through the system. And I'd be like, where the hell did you come from? And why are you throwing 98 with just a banger of a off-speed pitch? So that matters. So hopefully for the Mets, I think long-term success, you need to have your farm system, because we're seeing with the Orioles right now, it can provide you so much depth when things go wrong.
Yeah.
So, yeah, old tater tots, I feel you on hearing not being competitive till 2025. Well, I think that's why the GM thought it was maybe in confidence that he told Scherzer that. Those probably not Scherzer's words to speak. That never feels good for a fan, Brad. You ever being told that we're, yeah, you know what, we're looking for another year. But essentially, for Orioles fans, you can relate to it. I mean, that's what the Orioles were essentially saying.
Yeah,
without saying it.
Yeah, I mean, the year that Manny got traded and basically the team got gutted, I think that it went without saying that we were on the next year. There comes a point in the time in the season, I think, that you just have to accept that and be like, all right, well, we know we're not going to win, so we just got to do what we got to do and prepare for next season.
That's all you can do, right? And for baseball, it's harder just because it's such a long season. And then maybe you get a little bit of hope for a hair for a week. And then whammy, your hopes are crushed.
Yeah.
But hey, you know, to your point, yes, I think that the farm systems are great. But also, I wanted to touch on one more thing with the depth. That the Orioles' depth, and I just said it a second ago, that is a huge reason why they are the best team in the American League. You lose Cedric Mullins. You lose Aaron Hicks for this time. Ryan Mountcastle has vertigo. And then all of a sudden, through all of that, well, actually, Aaron Hicks came from the Cedric Mullins injury the first time. Ryan O'Hearn comes up and becomes this dominant bat from the left side. And then the Orioles just seem to find someone else stepping up at a different time. You know, like you brought up Aaron Judge being out of the lineup. When Judge got hurt, that team really was different.
Yeah.
So that's a testament. That's how you survive the hard times, is when you're able to, your depth and the solid foundation that you've built can help you get there. So that's been great. Ned wanted to talk about Mateo. And we'll just, I know we got a lot going, but that's been a hot topic.
It has been.
You know, first off, I tweeted something out last night about, I know people are passionate. I just want to touch on it for a second. I get people are passionate. I love that people love their teams. I love that they can get frustrated. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, right? I'm a firm believer in that. But one thing that I hate, and I can't stand, and there's no excuse, is that if someone, and I'm going to use language here even more, if someone fucks up and you go out there and they're not trying to mess up, and you are now hoping ill will on them personally, that to me is unacceptable. And that's the only thing. I'm not gonna touch more on it. And again, faceless person, all these things, it's not that, but I just want to point this out. At the end of the day, this is still a game. These are still people. There's no place for it. So for anybody, also, just like, you know, it's funny, with the Ravens games growing up, they always would do the whole like security. For old Ravens fans that went to the game, you don't go out there, or sorry, it's saying like, hey, be careful walking here or doing this. And above all, don't be a jerk. And Lisa, right. I see what you're saying in the comment. Yeah, like stuff like that. It's like, there's no room for it, you know? But also at the same time, you can't control other people. So control how you can act. So that's my recommendation. But just want to say, be passionate about the sport, but make sure we don't cross the line here, people. So now to the Mateo thing. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just speaking of Mateo, obviously he's been in a real tough spot performance-wise, not just with his bat, but also defensively. You know, we saw that a little bit last night, and there's been a couple of other instances that we could bring up. Is there a world in which we see him, you know, kind of put back down into the minors, or bring up another prospect, such as his name just escaped me. But do you see that something like that happening, or is it a situation in which, you know, for example, we just saw George Springer went 35 straight at bats without a hit up until last night. So is it more of a, hey, let's give him a chance, or at what point do you say, hey, we have to make a change?
So first off, the 0 for 35 thing with Springer. When you've established yourself for a while, they're going to give you way more time. But also, sure, this proves that some of the best players in the world are going to slump, and it sucks. And I haven't had the 0 for 35. I've had like a 1 for 35, and that felt terrible. Yeah. The amount that you just feel like you can't hit anything. I know people are getting on Austin Hayes for having a slow second half. It sucks. It stinks, but it happens. For Mateo, I think the Orioles are in a position now where you're kind of in the middle ground. And for Mateo, he's a guy that plays off of energy, plays off of confidence, and he doesn't have either of those things right now. The first month of the season, he had it. He was, and you could tell he was feeling it. It was almost on the borderline of confident and cocky, which, hey, like in sports, you got to be that way, But as soon as things started to go wrong, you could see little by little. So right now, the Orioles have to decide, do they want to have him on as a kind of a depth piece that they still feel that they can trust and help him through the hard times? Or are you going to take someone that has shown a lot in the minors like Ortiz and Norby and switch it up? But I will say this. For everyone that says all this and hopes that you're going to go out there, that the next prospect's going to come up and they have nothing to prove down there. And I get the Orioles have plenty of those guys that proven that they're ready. You can't still expect them to come up here. Like people expected Colton Cowser to come up and be better than some of the guys in the big leagues right now. And he struggled.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But that just gives you the example of it. The grass is not always greener. So that's the only thing. I think the Orioles have to make the decision. Is Mateo still a guy that we just have there and hope something gets a little bit better? Or are we just handing it over to a younger guy that, yeah, we love his talent, but are we trusting him enough to go through his growing pains? Because the Orioles have had a lot of their players so far going through this growing pains. And the question is, do you want some of those guys to possibly be going through that, the last month or two of the season?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I think that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Brandon Hyde can pull the trigger essentially whenever he wants. So why not? The Orioles in a good spot. So why not give him a chance? And then if it comes to crunch time and it's still a problem and he thinks that perhaps Mateo is going to be a detriment going into the postseason, then perhaps maybe you try to make that switch. I mean, within the next month. Wouldn't you say? I would say once we get into September and it's still a problem, then maybe those decisions start to get made. Yep.
But I will say one decision that's going to happen. Heston Kjerstad's going to be in the major leagues and he's just going to bang. Yeah. That one, I'm very gun-ho. I'm very bullish on that. I've said it for a while. I think he's the best pure hitter that they have right now that can help the team win. Not saying long-term, right now. That dude is special. And I think people forget about that sometimes with all the prospects the Orioles have. I saw For Baseball's for Fun, and we might save that actually for our guest, if that's okay. Brad, you cool with that?
Yeah. And we do have our guest coming up, and I'm super pumped to chat with him. And we have some pretty funny stories as well that I'm looking forward to getting into. So make sure you guys are sticking around for that. Also, make sure you hit that thumbs up and like the video, share it if you wouldn't mind doing that as well. We certainly would appreciate it, guys. It's crazy. I don't know if you saw this before we went live, Ryan, but we're now up to 350 subscribers, which I'm super pumped about.
Let's go.
This is officially our 4th show and we're growing like crazy. Also, like I said, we have some really good things going on, and I'm super pumped for it. I know that we're still small, but it seems like we're growing really fast. And so I'm really, really pumped to see where this goes and getting us through the football season and everything else. I really think that this is kind of like the start of, not to be too cliche, but something special.
Yeah, and I will say for a lot of people out there trying different things and whatnot, like I try to be very positive with what's going on in life.
Yeah.
But I will be honest and transparent here. When we started this, sometimes you sit there and go, well, shit, is this going to work? Like, what am I doing? I do that. I say that a lot, but the thing is, you got to start somewhere. And I'm right there with Brad. I honestly, I wish I was more confident as a player. I always had the self-doubts because of expectations, what was going on. And
sure.
And I felt like that was always a battle. And so I always kind of had doubt. Well, could I do it? Could I not do it? And that bothered me. And I told myself moving forward, can I change that? And honestly, I can wholeheartedly say with what we're doing now, I'm very confident that we are going to go places we want to go. But also, why is the community that we're starting to build? Like that to me is the big thing. And we value our community. So that's just, I want to throw that out there. We really do appreciate it. And we got a lot of cool things, which I'm getting giddy, but I can't tell you guys yet.
I know. I'm super pumped, bro.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I wanted to, I mean, do you want to transfer into football while we wait for our guest? Do you want to keep baseball? Cause we got some questions, some baseball questions still. And then maybe do football after.
Yeah, we could do that. I'm just making sure he's thinking around 8, which again,
okay.
for those coming on that stay, I'm excited about this because it's another baseball mind, and you guys probably don't know much about him, and that's perfectly fine. But I will tell you this: a lot of insights, especially what's just happened, specifically with the Houston Astros, and then we got a big series with the Orioles, them coming up soon. I'll wait for a response here, but I will make the one comment here about you did miss the part when we talked about Mountie dominating. It's actually incredible. Hats off. That's a hats off right there.
That's hilarious.
And but yes, anyway, yeah, Mountie's been dominating. And I told people before this, or those that are turning in, where was I going with this? Sometimes my thoughts just evade myself.
We're talking about
Mountie, but everybody has their team. I'll tell you this: when I was in High A, the Hillcats, it was the Guardians High A team. They saved my career in 2019 because I came off the injured list. Hit 333 to start the year. Then I went like $160 for the next month and a half. Wanted to just, it's like in Wedding Crashers. Like I'm reading, I thought you said the book wasn't yours. It's not, but I took a glance. That series, when I played them, I think I hit 800 that series, and we played them again the next week, and I hit 600, and like my whole life changed. And for some reason, I couldn't tell you why. It's just everyone has that team. I'm just thankful for the Orioles and for Orioles fans. It's Mountie. That Mountie's the guy for the Blue Jays. So, yeah. That's story time for me, Brad. You got any story? You got any teams that you played well against?
I not really. No. But I guess a guy can dream. If I had a team that I wish I would have done well against, I don't know. Maybe I guess it would have been the Red Sox. I would have loved to have been able to just, clear that green monster every time I hit Fenway. But I did see some non-Orioles related questions here. I see one from Baseball is Fun. Is it better to trade prospects that are unproven, thinking Drew Gilbert for Verlander for the short term with not knowing the long-term value of a top prospect? What are your thoughts on that? Maybe this is going to be a good question for our guest coming up. But
it's going to be a great question for our guests.
Yeah.
But we can... You know what, Brad? What are your thoughts?
Should we table this for our guest?
Yes, I think we should.
Let's table
this is his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
By the way,
baseball is for fun. If you're a Astros fan, you're gonna really look forward to our guest tonight for sure. So let's table that question. You're gonna look forward to the answer for that one, and it's not just gonna come from Ryan and I. So any other questions we need to address baseball wise? Or anything else that you want to address?
Do I want to address baseball wise? Because we could, we could hot route a little bit and save some of the football for after, and we could do a little bit of we could just switch up the order. Okay, so Jeremy's actually coming on soon. So
perfect.
So this is sorry. So the guy's name's Jeremy. Won't give the last name yet, but you know what? Screw it. It's already out of the table here. So guys, our guest is Jeremy Booth. He is a former Major League scout for the Houston Astros. He currently does work as an analyst in Houston. kind of what I've been doing here in Baltimore. But on top of it, too, he's a part of the New Balance Future Series. So all these prospects that have been coming up, including the guy that was just mentioned, Drew Gilbert, he has insights on him as well. And he's got a great perspective. He also just came out with his new book, Inside the Mind of a Scout, that gives parents, players, anyone really perspective on really what the behind the scenes look is into the world of baseball and scouting. So that's kind of, and again, like, we're excited about this. I've been pushing for it, and I'm pumped for him to come on. And also we're going to preview the Astros coming to town then, because why the hell not? So that's our guest. Really great. He should be coming on in the next 10 or so minutes. Do we want to do a quick love to see it, hate to see it while we wait, Brad?
Let's do it.
Let's hop in. So, love to see it, hate to see it, guys. We do this every week. So again, same thing with the Hear Me Outs. Same thing with love to see it, hate to see it. Same with grinds my gears. Things that just really tick you off, make you mad, anything. We want to hear more of what you guys like. Love to see it. Brad, why don't you kick one off here?
Yeah, so for me, I love to see, Ryan, that we now have a presence in a Japanese baseball market. You put out a tweet in one of a very popular, I guess, baseball Twitter account, and it was about our Fujinami chatter, and it blew up. And so now I guess we can officially say that we have broken into the Japanese baseball market, and you just love to see it.
Love to see it. It's
it was incredible, man.
I will say this for people. I love the Japanese baseball culture. You're talking about people who are passionate about baseball here. Should go over there. I actually did one of the interviews with one of my former teammates who's now playing overseas in Japan, and he can't rave enough about the passion they have over there. He says it's literally an experience like no other. So I hope that's something we continue to do and be involved with. I'll say on a hate to see it. No, I'll do my love. Do I want to do my love? What do I love nowadays? Well, actually, the hate to see it's on my mind, guys. I just got to get it out here. Confession. Small street corner, 2 cars, and my car like nicked a part of a mirror, and I hated to see it. One for their car, which is just a little bit of mirror damage, and that I had to pull over. And also, it's good karma. Pull over, do the right thing. I left a note, but it's pouring rain, and I'm sitting there like, I hate to see that this just happened. There was an oncoming car. I didn't just naturally hit this truck, by the way. There's a car that came, and I just tried to avoid it. Whammy. So that hurt my soul. Hate to see it, Brad.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. I don't have any hate to sees this week, so I think that one would take the cake anyway.
Yeah, you're probably still going on about hate to see it with.
I was talking about the smoke still a thing.
Still
man.
On your mind.
The weather also sucks, but I guess maybe we'll save that for later.
That honestly was the other hate to see it. That it's, well, yeah, we'll save some things for later. I will say what I love to see. And this was we'll go back to the Orioles. I love to see that how many people pack the yard for the Yankees series.
Yeah.
Really love that. That's what people need. And we've talked about this in the past. Does energy help players? Absolutely. Do they get behind their fans, or they get behind the energy of their fans? Absolutely. So I love to see that. And I hope for everyone, there's a lot of big series coming up in Baltimore. Get out there. Go and support them. This is truly a special season right now. Don't take it for granted. If you love the team and you can go to the game, you should go. And then when I'm working pickles, you should come down and say what's up for the pregame show on 105.7. So, that's what I got. I'm still trying to figure out, and we apologize, but we're trying to figure out scheduling and things happening. I'm in a glass case of emotion in this just room that has no artwork whatsoever. I have a Peloton next to me, but that's about it. I think some things we're going to touch on, though, to keep you guys updated of what we're going into next. We will talk about the NFL. I think there's a lot of things, including storylines that are happening along. Oh, yeah, I figured out the other love to see it for you. What's happening today in the NFL?
Oh, yeah. Games are
Sports.
happening. Yeah.
Jets Browns Hall of Fame game starts tonight. So that is neat. Not that we're expecting a lot of great players to start, but like, who doesn't love when football's going on? There's good energy. Just reminds you that fall's around the corner.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick just said people love a winner. Oh, did I click it or you click it, Brad?
I think we clicked at the same time.
Did we really? Because I clicked it way. I thought I clicked it way ahead of you. But I can't imagine. If anyone's seen this, does anyone remember the Delman Young double down the line? I'm sure plenty of you did.
Everybody knows that. Yeah.
Get the goosebumps. Like, those are the moments. And so again, it's sports are so hard to win. Sports are so hard to be able to, even if the Orioles are even better next year, doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to result in the same success. Some things just keep going your way. So just enjoy the ride. I think being the moment is something that I hope that people can understand. Trying to get an update from him. Brad, you got any things you want to, anything we should plug right now?
Anything we should plug? I don't know. What are you thinking?
Well,
if you would like, you could go follow myself and Ryan over on our socials. Go check us out over at Ryan Ripken on Twitter, and at Own the Chaos is yours truly over there as well on Twitter. You can go ahead and, of course, follow us on all of our socials. And we'll be back here. And let us know if you are digging the virtual thing, because Ryan and I have also toyed around the idea of potentially, I don't know, doing this more than once a week, trying to cover a lot more sports. And I feel like sometimes we're trying to cram everything into one stream a week because there's so much happening. And so, yeah, let us know what you guys think.
Yeah, we want to try to expand more and more. So if a virtual show works once a week, then we can add in another live show then, which is something we wanted. Sorry, live being in person. This is live. We are currently live. I currently have a cramp in my calf, and that feels great. Just trying to get back into my basketball legs. Before I'm getting the final time before we get our guest on here, but I want to run through what we're talking about later for those that want to stick around and talk about it. In the NFL, obviously the Hall of Fame games kicking off tonight. Jets, Browns. The Jonathan Taylor situation with the Colts continues to go on. And we actually have a couple clips from even some former player that kind of describes how the business is. And we're going to discuss that more in full. A little bit of update around the Ravens, because if you're from Baltimore, you don't like the Ravens. I don't know what to tell you. We're going to talk about it. And fantasy football is finally back and almost back. And so that is something I would love to dive more into. And I think who doesn't love it? But I'll tell you who doesn't care if your team sucks or not. That's the players. So keep that in mind for this year. So, hey, we got one answer right there. I clicked it first. Greg, we appreciate it. That helps us. I mean, look, at the end of the day too, we're going to try to be more active to, add more topics that you guys want to talk about. And we're going to open up like a mailbag, or in this case, this could be the mailbag. In here, you can ask your questions, but it can give us a little bit more time, what you guys want to talk about, something to look forward to. Not that you don't look forward to seeing Brad's face and my receding hairline on a weekly basis. I actually used that in the wedding about, I used to help myself from not crying was allergy season. And I made it to 30 and hopefully I have my hairline when I hit 40. People got a rise out of that. The odds are not in my favor. Aaron Rodgers, Rick predicts Aaron Rodgers will be great as usual. Time will tell. The waiting game's interesting. Should we? I swear, by the time we go into the next topic,
I know
Whammy,
he's gonna show up.
Right. He's gonna show up. But I mean, it's not the end of the world. But I guess we've come this far to wait. So I guess the one thing then we'll talk about. You guys might have seen me post something with the Iron Rooster. Could that be something? Yes, it could. There is a fantasy football event that is going to be dropping soon here. Foundation event as well. That's the only clues I'm going to give you. So please stay tuned on the social pages for more. Really excited about it. And we got a lot to dive into with that, but it's not worth to continue to bother. I guess in the moment while we wait for our guests, and so we keep on baseball for the next few minutes, if anyone would have any other baseball questions that you would like answered right now, or if you want to hear Brad go on a rant about something with baseball, please let us know.
I don't even know what I'd be ranting about, but
you know what I was going through? Actually, Rocco and I talked about wedding songs. We've talked about movie quotes in the past.
Yeah.
I started thinking about Anchorman right there. Like, I don't know what I'm yelling about. That's where I felt. Anchorman is one of my favorites.
Is that your favorite comedy?
Wedding Crashers is up there. I can't help but quote Wedding Crashers. It's like religious for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's almost obnoxious how much I can quote that movie in the part of it.
Bro,
right,
good comedies don't happen anymore.
They don't. They really don't. They really don't. All right. Hey, Greg's got a question. Yep. All-time favorite pro athlete.
Oh, man. I guess I feel like I got to go with Michael Jordan. I think maybe it could be potentially generational, but obviously I still think he's the greatest of all time NBA player, basketball player, but like also just growing up watching him as a kid. Like that's like probably my most memorable athlete watching in sports. So I think I'd have to go with MJ.
Hey, you know what? He's done a lot of great things. Is it bad? Is it wrong of me if I don't say it's my dad? Like I feel like I'd be shunned.
No.
Okay,
no, it has to be other than your dad.
Okay. Thank you. Growing up, like
I'll save you there. It has to be other than your dad.
But growing up, like I only liked him because he was my dad. I didn't like him because like, oh, you played in all these games. And I was like, oh.
Right.
I didn't even know what a streak was when I was young.
Right.
I learned about probably streaking before I learned about what a streak was. So, in Baltimore, I'll say this: one of my favorite players to watch. Ed Reed was one of my favorite NFL players to watch. I could watch him intercept a football or block a punt any single day, or just like I would just watch him. Wouldn't even watch the play, just watch Ed. And for me, that was great. He was definitely up there. Jordan, I wish I got to watch more. Just was young, but I love the stories. And I will say, I loved keeping to the Baltimore guys. I loved what Michael Phelps accomplished. I think sometimes it goes unnoticed, but the dude, what he did, and if you guys have ever swam or ever been swam, that's the word. You'll understand. Swimming's hard, and the fact to do it at that level and to be that dominant, to be Mr. Olympian essentially, is really cool.
Yeah.
And so sorry, while I'm figuring out this one thing, getting our guests settled and situated here, Brad, why don't you do the whole thing about where we need to subscribe and tag and yada, yada, yada.
That's right. So guys, if you haven't done so already, if you're visiting for the first time, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. We certainly would appreciate it there, as well as hitting that like button if you haven't done so. I'm actually looking at the likes right now. We got 9 likes and 9 people watching. Feel like maybe some people who have already liked it have already left. So if you haven't liked it already, hit that like button. We certainly would appreciate it. And make sure you guys are tuning in, because we're going to be doing this on the reg. Hit that notification bell too while you're at it, because we're going to need all the support that we can get. You get notified when we go live, so you guys can pop on. We certainly would appreciate that. So without further ado, Ryan, how about you welcome in our guest?
All right, perfect. So everyone, finally, our guest for this evening is Jeremy Booth. So for those that talk, I'll bring him in. He can explain himself too. But what's really cool for us, and I actually sent out a tweet earlier in the week. I said, I trust this source because this guy knows baseball. And that's something that I think a lot of people like to hear and enjoy. So how do I bring him on? Brad, you can bring him on.
I got him.
I don't even know how this works. Jeremy, can you hear us?
I got you. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you doing? You're out on the West Coast right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak to some players for the Bend Elks in the West Coast League. Former teammate of mine's a coach here. It was good to get out and see some summer college baseball. You know what? I mean, we say this all the time. I feel pretty good about the guys I talked to today. Some bright kids, got some big futures ahead of them, not just athletically, but, personally as well. It's a good day. It's been a good day so far.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you taking the time. And for those that, if you missed the spiel before, and you can tell me, you can explain to more people about your background, but just so for people to know, you've been around the game for a while, former Major League scout. You are doing analyst work in Houston. You can correct me if I'm wrong at some point here. You have the New Balance Future Series, which you're wearing right now. And you just had your book come out, The Inside the Mind of a Scout. Am I doing good so far?
You're on a roll. You're doing it better than I could. I love it.
Wow. If you need a hype man, let me know.
Let's go.
But so talk to me a little bit about, before we dive into it, the Future Series for New Balance. And then also just your scouting background. Then we'll get into some of the questions.
Yeah. So my scouting background, I was very fortunate to start with the Minnesota Twins, coming off the field as a minor league player. And then I did a year as a coach in transition. And the Twins gave me a tough area, by the way, Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, and West Virginia. Keep in mind, I'm a kid from Los Angeles, California, and all of a sudden I find myself in Florence, Kentucky. So that was a little bit of a culture shock. But, man, I loved being in the territory, had some good players, and it was a great introduction. The Brewers then hired me to do South Texas, Louisiana. I was there for 3 years, was fortunate to sign a couple of big leaguers. And then Jack Sorensic brought me to Seattle as a cross-checker. I spent 4 years with the Mariners and their scouting department, running around the planet a little bit, and had a good time with some good people. Very fortunate to have some good mentors in scouting. And then I transitioned. It was time to do something different. We wanted to help the game a different way, and founded the New Balance Future Star Series, which is the global initiative of New Balance Baseball. And that's, we've now had quite a few amateur players run through here that have become professionals, one of which is in Baltimore, who's in the rotation, a couple other ones in Cleveland, Cincinnati. So, Dylan Cruz just went second overall. He's an alumni. So it's been a very interesting road. Very fortunate to have good people around us and good with us, and obviously talent, right? I mean, we could say all we want. These guys are good players. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. So, the players have that type of ownership. And along the way, Jason Bristol decided to ask me if I want to talk baseball. And so I got a chance to start talking about the Astros and do some analysis in TV. So it's been a very fortunate last 7 or 8 years.
I'd say so. I'd say the least that's a lot that you've been able to do. We're gonna go more into things with your book and even background. I think a lot of people are interested just because you're talking about Houston, and we had a conversation earlier back when we first met. obviously it's been fun times in Houston for the last, I don't know, decade, it feels like, for fans. But you were right on the thick of it with the Verlander situation. And so, and if I'm not mistaken, but Drew Gilbert, was he also part of the program? Is that right?
Yeah, Drew Gilbert's an alumni, absolutely. Gilly Goubert himself, who's now headed to New York.
All right. So walk us through for people to understand what the Verlander situation, because the no trade clause Verlander had, and he had to accept where people wanted to, or where he wanted to go, essentially. Just kind of walk through in your perspective of how you saw this whole situation out, and then also talk about you, since you know Drew Gilbert, the guy that the Mets are getting.
The thing about these type of deals, when you're a player like Justin Verlander, you have the opportunity to dictate, your future, if you will. He's at the point in his career where he's a mercenary. He's not going to go somewhere to rebuild. He wants to win titles. That's how these guys do it when they've had this type of run. This deal was done, I would guess, at least in principle, about a week ago. Now, there's a lot of scenarios that come through, and there's a lot of things that play out, and other teams get involved. And of course, it's still got to be the best offer. But, Justin Verlander, he wasn't going to go to Cincinnati. I don't think that was an option for him. He wasn't necessarily interested in San Diego. His wife and Kate Upton and him, they sold their house in LA, right, in Beverly Hills a year ago. So that was kind of an indication maybe the West Coast wasn't in the cards. And he's had such success in Houston, it kind of comes down to, listen, I like New York. Am I going to stay here? I will go to Baltimore. That was real. He was interested in coming to Baltimore with where they are now. And potentially going to Houston. So as the offers materialized, Mike Elias out there, as you guys well know, he has a certain plan and course he's going to stick to. I think he decided that Verlander stakes might have been a little bit too rich. Jim Crane is, let's say, willing to do things like that with this window and maximize it, as Houston is a barren farm system in the first place. So, it's basically just starting over again a year later. So I think that was pretty easy to do. And when Verlander figured out that the Mets weren't going to try to contend for a little bit, it was see you later, New York. So I think it came together pretty quick. I think for sure, where I could get the sensor on the ballpark, because they knew the night prior, right? And so all that was left was just figuring out, not necessarily was Drew Gilbert in the mix, was Ryan Clifford in the mix, was the Melton kid in the mix, who else were they going to put in there? Because the particulars of the dollars coming back to Houston and Justin Verlander coming to Houston were done.
So out of curiosity then, before I ask about Gilbert, if Elias said, yeah, I want to make this happen, the equivalent for you, what do you think it would have taken for the Orioles to get Verlander? Like, who would have had to been given up?
Yeah, so the thing about the Orioles is that because of the way Mike has drafted since he got there, and because of the guys that were left behind, I don't know that there's a scenario where that happens with a player like Gilbert. I don't know if they had guys that were far enough away in their window, because in theory, they're just entering their window. Now they got to go win, right? But this is just getting going. So guys like Kauser and Kerstad and Rutschman and Grayson Rodriguez and the guys that have started to arrive, some of which he drafted, some of which he didn't, I don't see him parting with that young core. They're controllable. They're all already at the big league level or close to the big league level. So that's not something he's going to do. And it's a smart move they did, and frankly, for the Orioles sit versus where the Astros are. So I know what the question was, what would he give up? I don't see a scenario where Mike does that deal. I think it's like, look, we'll do something with a 1-to-1. We'll do something with one player out of. I'm not giving you what you're asking for. So I don't think it got very far.
Interesting. Yeah, because the biggest two headways in Baltimore were what was it going to take to get Verlander, then the final reports of the Orioles talking to Dylan Cease and the White Sox, and there was the rumors about what would that take. And I'm with you, though, on that. There was no I didn't see any scenario where the Orioles were going to part with any of their top-tier guys, especially when they feel like their window maybe wasn't supposed to be this year, or supposed to be maybe the next year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. So talk to me then about Drew Gilbert then. You've seen him up close. I mean, obviously, talented player. What's your analysis on him, on who the Mets are getting?
Well, I'll keep it simple, because the player that I've compared him to is a player that was a Met at one time, and that's Lenny Dykstra. And I think he's going to go ahead and he's going to play left field, play some center. In today's day of analytics, guys that aren't burners, our 80 runners can play center field a little bit easier. We've seen other guys out there that aren't the fastest players. I mean, even Aaron Judge has played center field, right? So, I mean, we can find other ways for those guys to do it. I think he's Lenny Dykstra, plays with his hair on fire, extra base hits. There's some power in there, some home run power, right? But he's gonna run into walls. He's gonna steal. He's gonna take the extra base. He's gonna energize the crowds. He's the right fit for what Steve Cohen and Billy Upler are trying to do, which is gather guys to again try to arrive at time. New York will love him. He's unfazed by crowds. I mean, look, if you're an Astro and you're coming to Houston at this point in time, you got to have some pretty thick skin because that's not going away anywhere for any time soon, right? So he embraced it. Drew stepped to the front of it. He's like, yeah, I can't wait to be in Houston. I think we know New York is let's call it an interesting market to play in, right? I think that's probably fair. Yeah. So I think if he's gonna go there, I don't think that's gonna be a problem. I think the Met fans are gonna love him.
Jeremy, you mentioned that the Astros farm system isn't quite where it needs to be. My question for you would be: so is this more of the Astros need to win now, and then what happens next year? Do they end up doing a rebuild? What's that look like for the Astros in the next few years to come if they can't at least get to the World Series this year?
It's a really good question. I would equate what's happened in Houston since 2017 and it's different timelines, so they're different franchises, but to when the Red Sox first won in 2004, right? They had such a change in expectations in that city, right? It went from the people that showed up every day to the ballpark and always sold out, but were losing all the time, right? Never got all the way through it, to now there's an expectation. And then you had the Patriots on their run, and the Celtics had some titles, even the Bruins, right? So the city had kind of 20 years of regeneration and title town, I guess would be the way we would sum that up. In Houston, hasn't quite been that way, but the Astros have energized the entire place. Now, the circumstances of what justifies success in Houston are different than they were before 2015, 16, 17. And if you look at their contract status down the line, you've got Altuve and Bregman that are signed through 24. You've got, I want to say Tucker and Valdez are up in 25, right? Then you start getting into Pena in 27 and Alvarez in 28 and Javier. So you start getting into that extra window. I think Jim Crane's looking at this and he's going, look, these guys need a bunch of money. I got to win right now because I don't have time to reset. When I reset, it's everybody. I'm resetting across the board, and I need some guys to arrive to be part of that second wave. You have to figure that second wave doesn't include Kyle Tucker at this point. At least as we sit today, I'd be surprised if he's back in Houston. I think they'll end up picking one of Bregman or Altuve. I really do. It's just my opinion on the money. And the starters are locked up, and they're gonna have to wait to see what happens with that when that money comes off the books. So I think he just saw the window of 2 to 3 years, and if they're that far away with their prospects anyway, as a whole, to make an impact. Especially with the emergence of Chas McCormick in the outfield, who should be playing every day. I don't see a reason why they wouldn't make that trade for prospects. I think it was just a matter of agreeing which ones.
It's a fascinating game within the game, and that's why I was glad to have you come on and talk about it, because that knowledge, when we're sitting here, there's so many things that go into constructing a roster at the right time, at the right moment. And what's your window? What are you expecting? Because these are questions that the Orioles, right? What the Astros are doing right now is what the Orioles are going to have to do if they hope to do in the next 5 to 10 years. So having said that, as we move into where the Orioles are right now, in your mind, if you were to sit there, we'll let you put on the GM hat here for a second. If you were to sit here, what would you think would be the moves? Because a lot of the talks are about extending certain guys. You're still trying to figure out who exactly is in your long-term plan. Do you think that the Orioles, in this case, that's why they've been more hesitant on making moves, is because the fact that they're still trying to figure out at the end of the day who's in and who's out in Baltimore?
I think that when you're talking about the Angelos family, who you guys, know well, right? And I think when we're talking about Mike Elias and when he arrived in Baltimore, coming off sometime of success with Duquette, and then sometimes of not success with Dan Duquette. I think he had something that started with a few players. I think he was not interested in winning and competing right away because he knew that. We saw that play out. And I think this time he hit. See, what he's done in Baltimore that he didn't do in Houston from the draft side is that they've actually selected well. They've drafted pretty well over there, right? Now, they didn't do that necessarily in Houston once he got the job. They did a good job of trading, free agent acquisitions, right? Waiver claims. They were excellent, probably the best in baseball for a period of time at that particular piece of the game and roster construction in Houston. But when you're in Baltimore and you walk in that position and you got these early picks, the key is to hit on them. He didn't hit in Houston. You got Correa. That's one. That's technically Bobby Heck. But he didn't get Appel. He didn't get Aiken, right? And then they lucked into Bregman and Tucker. I think all that experience he's taken with him to Baltimore, along with controllable assets, which are cost-effective. We know the Angelos family's going to like that, right? The fans are going to come back. And honestly, the city, I will say this as an outsider who's not from Baltimore. I've been in that stadium a few times. That city deserves to win. That city really and that fan base deserves to win. The history with the Orioles and what has gone on out there with that franchise, it's an iconic franchise in the game. There's no way around it. The fact that they haven't won in as long as they have is a travesty. So, when it comes to what is going on out there, I think that he's caught fire, learned from his mistakes in Houston, and I think he's just going to kind of keep that core together. There's nothing worth it to him to mortgage anything he's got building, personality-wise, momentum-wise, player development-wise, staff-wise, to keep what has been happening and break that off with a piece here or there. This would come into play, I think, more next year if it's a World Series difference maker, not a postseason difference maker, right? You got to figure this is a postseason club. Doesn't mean they can't make a World Series. But a year from now, this is a different scenario, right? Everybody, in theory, takes another step forward because of their age, because of what they've accomplished so far. And if that happens, even if there's some regression to something regression to some kind of to the mean of where they are, or not as big a step forward, then you have pieces to move to get something else that is in a different level of value to help you win a World Series. I also think the reason why that's important is because the third wild card keeps everybody involved now. This is like the NBA, right? Everybody makes
crazy.
the playoffs. Right. So, if everybody's making the playoffs and one game moves you on, more and more teams are going to be competitive, and it's harder to find something back without giving up everything because the asking price is higher. So I don't know that there is any other scenario for Mike than staying the course. I think he learned that what it meant to do that in Houston. I think that's borne out with what they did when they were here. But I think overall, if it's something they'll do, to be next year, and you won't know who it is. It'll be a piece that they think is going to go backwards. That's going to bring a World Series difference maker, like a Verlander, like they did in 2017.
I love that. I love that explanation. It makes a ton of sense because, just kind of seeing how the Astros organization is being run, and then seeing a bit of the transition that we're seeing now with what Elias has been doing in Baltimore just makes a ton of sense. I know that a lot of our fans appreciate the clarification and just kind of shedding a different light on it. And speaking of a different light, Jeremy, let's shift gears a little bit and talk scouting here, because we saw something on Twitter today that was shared, and back in the day, the way that scouting was done to me is quite hilarious, and it comes down to explain to me why a scout would care how good looking a player is, because if we take a look at this is Cal Ripken Jr. scouting report that was shared as a pitcher. And if you can see this, it's a little blurry, but it says no glasses or known injuries, built like a handsome Jim Palmer. And I'm just trying to figure out why that was so impactful to Cal Ripken Jr.'s scouting report.
First of all, I think it's always interesting to see a Hall of Fame shortstop have a scouting report as a pitcher where it says he probably shouldn't play short, right? I think that's just so beautiful about our game in the first place. Okay, that's an awesome thing about it, about how subjective this is. But credit to the scout for getting him right, because he got him in there somehow, right? Cal went in, and that rest is history. So what I would say about the good looks, I think that's more about painting a picture. Now, if I'm Jim Palmer, I'm a little upset, because I'm on TV and I'm thinking I got some I'm good looking myself, right? But no, when it comes to that, I think it's more of a the fans are going to love him. He's easy on the eyes. Everybody's going to have a good time. I think that was more the point of it. You got to love the visual that paints for you, though, right? And I think that's big part of the scouting picture is painting the visual.
Yeah. So then kind of leading into it, because that's the funny part. That's the goofy part of it. But then you were looking at it right there. There was worrying about mobility. And that was something even a lot of the guys or a lot of the scouts when my dad was coming up, they wanted him to pitch. They wanted him to be a pitcher. And actually Earl Weaver, when the Orioles drafted my dad, he was really the one that said, I think we should let him play short and see what happens. So I guess for you, what is something then when you went through the scouting process for yourself of evaluating players, what were and you might have multiple things here, but what are some things that stick with you with trying to identify a player or makes them stick out in your eyes?
Well, the first thing that happens when you see a player is obviously the physical test, and that's outlined in that report. The eye test or what that looks like. The second thing is going to be, and it depends on the scout. So it's kind of 2A and 2B, right? It's how the approach to the game is. How does he show up? What's the makeup? How does he interact with his teammates and the tools? Now, for the argument's sake, we'll say 2A is going to be, all the intangible stuff we talked about. Well, if there's zero tools, the intangibles are great, but there's zero tools, right? If the tools are there and the instincts are high, the separator there is going to be important. If a guy's got, let's say, lesser tools, in this case, mobility, right? But he has great instincts and he has baseball IQ and he has great execution and he has actions and he has all the things that go with that to make up for maybe, let's say, a less mobile approach. Well, it doesn't mean he can't play short at all, right? It may mean he makes a routine play. It may mean that he goes to his left better than his right. You position guys differently. But when it comes to that, you have to find a place for him to fit. Earl Weaver was right, though. It worked out. It worked out okay, right? So looking at those type of instincts was the separator. Now, if neither one are present, you're not interested. Less instincts means more tools, just much like a pitcher. Less command, less feel means more velocity. More feel, more execution, more ability to change speeds, keep guys off balance. Less velocity needed, right? So it just depends. So it's really about how they fit into a role and how they paint a picture. But a guy like that has let's just say their average major league tools across the board and has plus instincts can end up a Hall of Famer.
I do like these last comments about his plays shortstop, but lack of fluid mobility will limit prospect here. Live arm, excellent. What is that? Command of
Command of curveball.
Yeah. Intense desire to play. Father's influence. What is that? Rate change.
Rate chance. Really, I saw. Yeah, it means that because of the bloodlines, right, and the history in the game, that he has a chance to have better instincts, but also there's a chance to sign. Right. A lot of what you're doing in there in those reports, at least that era of reports, which are typewritten or handwritten, and certainly the ones that I started with, was you had to project how much you would pay him and how much it would take. Right. So sometimes won't always match up. I think in there's a bonus number, right? I pay him for X number, right? There was a number in there somewhere. So I mean, if you're looking at that, that's what that means. I think with the bloodlines of the family, obviously Cal Sr., right? Obviously Billy's younger, right? Correct?
Yep.
Billy's younger. So
yep.
The bloodlines of the family said that there's a better chance that he was going to sign. And he did, right? Certainly for an organization like the Orioles, which there was history already, right? So when you do those things, I think that's what the scout was doing. The best part about being a scout in my era and the era today, as I've obviously transitioned to other things besides going to the ballpark every day, I would say this: those guys didn't have the experience and Rolodex and libraries that we do. They had to do a lot of different stuff. They had to go see different players. It was all on them. There wasn't a whole lot of cross-checking or different looks or collaboration. It was really, really, really tough to do. For all the moaning that we do today about how hard it is, man, we got analytics, we got Rapsodo, we got TrackMan, we got video angles, we got cumulative stats, we got college conferences, right? We got replay, we have bloggers. Like, they didn't have any of that stuff. They get to go back, and if you're second guessing yourself as a scout today, you just go turn on the TV. Hey, they like that guy. I'm going to go ahead and say I like that guy too. And no one's going to say anything to you, but back then they couldn't do that. So guys like me had the benefit of scouts like that had to really do it all on their own and get out there and see players. And the fact that he got them right, honestly, is a minor miracle with the way things were going back in those years. So, there's a lot of fun to be had with scouting reports like that. Those are really cool to see as far as the history of the game. But yeah, it was. I think the Orioles made a pretty good selection.
panned out. It
Okay.
it panned out a little bit.
It did all right
So
with it, I guess.
Lisa has a question here before then, because I want to just talk to you a little bit about the Astros and O's coming up. How long would you then scout a certain player? So if you have a pulse on a guy, how many times do you need to see him?
That depends on the length of time you've been scouting, right? The guys that have been doing it a long time, it doesn't take them very long. And I remember being at a game, and I actually put this in the book. I remember being at a game with a veteran scouting director, right? And I was bearing down, and man, I'm making my notes and I'm watching the field and I'm not missing a thing. This guy sees like 4 pitches and turns around and goes the other way. And I saw him. I said, next time I saw him, I said, hey, you know what? What was that about? He goes, the longer you do it, the more you know what it looks like. Right. So if he's right, though, because as you go through it now, I can see a guy for a lot less time than I did before, and I've got it kind of figured out. The hardest part about scouting is the amateur world. The pro world, you have different levels of stats, you have better play, you have more maturity. That scouting is a lot easier in concept to do than the kid that's on the backfields in Lufkin, Texas. It just is, because you don't know who he's playing against. You don't know the background he's from. He has never been out and been tested before, right? He's still at home in high school. That's a lot tougher to do. So, ideally, though, if we're putting numbers, 10 to 15 at bats, playing a catch in the outfield, a couple of innings on the mound, and I have a feel for him. But I see him a second time, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, that kind of leads into one, because now people are very intrigued with this. This was actually from baseball. It's for fun. He actually talked about Drew Gilbert. So to answer this question now, how much of scouting is based off of TrackMan or other data points versus scouts that would use the eye test to verify talent of a player?
That's a great question. How much time we got?
You can, whatever you want to talk about, however long you want to be.
Let me say it this way. Neither one each is better with the other side of it. Does that make sense? Each bet is the other side. So if you're an eye test scout, gut feel, instinctual scout, knows what it looks like type scout, it's better with the other side of the numbers because it can justify what you're seeing. That said, the data, the stuff we're talking about, TrackMan, Rapsodo, it's just reactive data for that swing, that pitch, that day. Right? It doesn't mean it's not a tool you have. It doesn't mean it doesn't go in the library and decision-making process, but it doesn't give you anything about projection. You need the eye test to talk about what a guy is going to be and develop into, and that's how they work together. So my answer to that is a lot of both goes into it. Usually subjective will carry because they can dream. Objective just stops right there. It stops at that moment in time. This is what it is. And any player who's ever played this game, if you're done developing at 17, 18, 21, 22, 23, it's over. There's a ceiling, and that's going to be it. You guys develop in the big leagues. So you have to be able to project that all the way out to see when they're going to hit their ceiling, when they're going to stop being a prospect, which, by the way, is a prospect is no longer a prospect when he hits the ceiling. That's as good as he can be. Prospect status goes away. So if you tie all that together, they have to work out with each other. The teams that draft well, including Baltimore, right, including the other ones that have done this, use both. And they carry with subjective and role dreaming, even though the numbers are just as important.
Well, that is a fantastic answer, because it is a different day and age now, like you just were explaining, where baseball is analytics. The data that's given to you is now at your fingertips. But I think it's good that it's good for both. That you don't have it's a good balance, to say the least. You need to trust your eyes, but also the data and analytics there are there to help you as well. That was awesome. So quickly then, because the last couple of things will get you out of here. Stros and Orioles coming up. That's turned into probably one of the most exciting series of the season coming up here next week. Kind of, and the Astros, Brad and I were talking about it before. They're hot. I mean, they're hot, but also they quietly, people were kind of not talking about them the whole way. And Texas had all this hype, and here they are, and Houston's only a game out of the race. So what are you kind of expecting for this upcoming series? Because really it's a team that has a lot of experience. In my case with the Astros, been there, done that, and an Orioles team that is probably just playing as confident as any team right now in Major League Baseball.
It's a great question. It's going to be can't miss TV for the next couple of days when they're there, right? I mean, the Astros going to get through New York and they're going to arrive in Baltimore, and you're not going to have. I'm not going to miss it. I know I'm watching. I'm not going to miss a pitch. I'm going to watch what goes on. I can tell you this: the Houston Astros, with all they've been through, and we'll just leave it at that because it's a lot, right? They know how to win. They've been there, done that, and the moment is not too big for them. That's the thing you can say about people who have done it. The moment's not too big. The Orioles, on the other side, I'm not sure they understand the moments that they're in. I don't think they have any fear, right? Because everything they're doing is the first time through. And so what you've got is you kind of got that the big bad dog on the playground in the Houston Astros, right? And you got the new kid that shows up who says, "Hey, listen, some point where you're sitting is going to be mine." And I think that's the attitude the Orioles have. So I think you're looking at a little bit, unless somebody caves, and I don't see that happening mentally, I think you're looking at a little bit of a slugfest fight. Now, it could be a 0-0 game. It could be 20-19. I don't know. But you're going to look at something that goes back and forth where there's not going to be anybody giving an inch, and everybody's going to be competing. You might see a series where there's an emotional spent type scenario at the end where you need your off day, not going into it, but like when you're done. Like, let me take a day or two to just digest what just happened here. You know what I mean? And so it's for everybody who in Houston and in Baltimore, especially with, the sub headline of Mike Elias having come from Houston, had such a hand in the waiver claims and trades and free agent signs that the Astros did, including a Justin Verlander in 2017, right? Had such a hand in all of that, selected Bregman, drafted Tucker. And now here's this franchise in Baltimore where they got a chance to go at it. They got a chance to go at it. So he's got a hand in both. It's going to be interesting to watch that happen. And if they can ever get a press box shot on Mike. And I'm admittedly somebody who's been hard on Mike in Houston in times. I got some history with him, but I think he's grown up. He's done a good job out there in Baltimore. And, I'd love to see the camera on him while this is going on to see where he's at. It'd be awesome.
It really is going to be blockbuster-esque in Baltimore. I'm excited. Last thing then, and then get you out of here because I know you've been running around a lot. But I just want to touch a little bit then on your book and what you've accomplished. And Inside the Mind of a Scout, what every parent wishes they knew about the Major League Scouting process. Can you just talk us a little bit? Because I honestly, what I love, and we're going to talk more in the future, I know you and I will, but it's such a different world nowadays. I know everyone has these certain expectations. So just can you kind of explain why you wanted to do this and then how your experiences can really help for all those that are wanting or are curious about how this process can truly be?
Yeah, the one thing, before I talk about that, I'm going to hit on something you just said about, how different it is today. And it's different because it's not what anybody in this generation of baseball players is used to. We've all seen a totally different model that's happened the last 25 years, right? However, not too long prior to that, this transfer rules in college, granted NIL is brand new, but the transfer rules in college were there. That happened then when I was in college. You got a free shot. Didn't matter where it was. You got a free shot. And if you did it twice, you had to sit out a year. The minor leagues, before what we knew them with this radical change to the affiliate structure they have now, this is what they were 75 years ago, right? They just had independent teams everywhere. And that stopped me if that sounds familiar today, right? Mm-hmm. So it's pretty similar when it comes to, it's just more of a reversion. It's like bringing the stuff of the past. Even in analytics, a lot of things that the scouting departments and front offices are quantifying, scouts have been doing by hand and mentally and writing down and putting their reports for years. They're just using different methods to do it at a different time, right? So it's kind of like a Back to the Future situation here. A little bit of a twist, but it's a Back to the Future situation. With the book, man, I wish I could say I wanted to write it. I wanted no part of this. I didn't want anything to do with writing a book. It was like I had too much stuff going on to do, and I felt like I had my attention needed to be elsewhere. But then we had COVID.
Yeah.
And in COVID, there wasn't anything anybody was doing, really. I mean, everybody had different stuff that was going that they were into. And, I live in Texas, so we had a unique approach to it. I think that's probably fair, right? From some of the other states out there. So, there's a little more going on there. But it started out with writing Scout School. That's what started out. It's just an online course that we were just using to help people learn how to scout. That's it. And then somebody said, hey, you ever think about putting this in a book? So the content was kind of already done. It was a lot of the outline content anyway, which is the first step. And then it just came about bringing it to life. What I didn't quite understand, because I've never been somebody that's what I call staring in somebody else's yard. I don't look in somebody else's yard. I don't look at somebody else's locker. I'm kind of focused on my world, and if I can be of help to somebody, I will be. But I don't believe in pushing into people's personal business. Just how I operate myself, right? But I had so many families that we had coming up and asking me, hey, what about this and what about that? And I was like, okay, I'll write a book and we'll put it on paper and you guys can understand what it means to have a role, how that equates to value, what numbers matter, what profiles mean, because we're going to go back to profiles, what it means to be able to have speed. Everybody's obsessed with the 60. You don't run the 60 after you sign a contract. Like you don't do it anymore. That's it. And so, does that speed work? Does it play? Why does it go backwards? What does it mean? So all these different nuances of the game that people never see till you get behind that, what I thought would help them have a better vision and make better decisions on the front side, because I was getting the questions anyway, right? So we're getting the questions anyway with the players that we're impacting and we're trying to guide. So it was just kind of I guess a perfect storm, if you will, of bringing it together. If it's able to help people, that's what matters. It's not something that I've looked back at and as more of an accomplishment. I didn't write it for that reason. I wrote it for other people to get something out of it, because every single day that I wake up, man, I'm just happy to be moving and getting around and seeing how I can breathe today. And, it's better than the alternative, right? I mean, we're going forward. The other alternatives are not. And I just prefer to go that way, straight ahead and continue to see what kind of doors I can knock down. So if it helps other people, I'm happy for it. I'm blown away and very thankful for the response. I was glad it was a bestseller like it was for a few weeks. But as long as people are getting something out of it, some clarity in a very confusing process, make better decisions for their sons and better decision in the game, and maybe get some life lessons, I'm thankful that it exists.
I love that, man. I think that's amazing. Makes me want to read it. So I certainly appreciate it, guys. If you want to go check that out, it is on Amazon. Anywhere else that they can find that, or is Amazon the best place?
Amazon's got it. Here's what I will say, since I know this is I've enjoyed the time to say this here. A while back, I have not been. I'm the type of guy, Ryan. You've learned this, and we'll learn this as we do more. I'm pretty direct, right? Pretty direct, and I'm just kind of
figured that
out there, and not sugarcoating a whole lot. And I'm big on accountability. So I had a couple of upset fans that didn't like something I said about the Astros, try to give me some fake reviews. You know what I say? Keep it coming. Bring it. Give me as much press as you can, because there's no bad press for that book. There's nothing you can do about it. No, seriously, there's a lot of fun. If anybody wants to read it, I appreciate even taking the time to acknowledge that it's there. Pass it on to somebody that can use it. There's a young ball player in your life somewhere, maybe it can help, and God willing, it'll help somebody out.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great. That's the thing for us is, honestly, we want people to be honest with their thoughts and decisions. That's what we live for. And yeah, you're right. I'm already picking up on the direct part. So, but look, Jeremy, we can't thank you enough for taking the time. Actually, one more question. Do you have a favorite place where you scouted? Any favorite place you went? Where you got?
Any major league stadium. And I do mean any major league stadium. If you look at here's one I'll narrow down for you. Jeter's documentary, The Captain, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you watch The Captain, you guys remember the scene where he hurts his ankle at first base and he has to be taken off? If you watch that sequence, I'm sitting behind home plate scouting that game.
Really?
So,
there
we go.
That has to be my favorite place, just because Fenway Park has to be my favorite place to scout, just because I'm in The Captain. Right. You can actually see me kind of rolling my eyes and this guy's looking over my shoulder at my notes. It's kind of funny because you look back on it all those years later and you see it. But for now, I'll say Fenway Park. Any big league stadium is a treat to be a part of.
That's amazing. Yeah. Now it's my homework. We're going to go find that clip and see you just right there in the moment. All right. Now we'll let you go, but Jeremy, really appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon. But thanks for all the insight. This was tremendous.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Had a lot of fun.
Thank you. It was great. Bro, that was awesome.
Hell yeah.
Definitely need
for
to
all
have him
those
back on for sure.
Dude, so that's why I wanted him to come on. One, has a great feel for the game, and I know a lot of people might have not known who he was before tonight. Yeah. Just like for a lot of us, it's a huge world out there, but I'm telling you, getting a chance to had a mutual connection. A guy named Chris, shout out Chris if you're watching. And Chris put us in touch, said it'd be a great fit to talk. And really, he knows what he's talking about. I think it's just point blank. You be around, you talk to him. And our thing here is we're going to bring you people that you're going to learn something or be entertained. That's our goal here. So awesome, pumped, fired up. Could have a lot of clips there. So, Brad, what do you want to do here? Should we just try to push through real quick, or should we we'll table football for another day?
Let's go ahead, and I think we should. There's so much that I want to dig into on football that I feel like we were doing a disservice if we just tried to rush through it.
Let's do it. Go ahead. Okay, so what do you want to do?
Let's go ahead and table it. Yep, and then we'll revisit it. I think we're gonna have a ton to talk about as far as preseason games are concerned. So I think that next show we'll make football the priority, as long as nothing crazy happens in baseball. But I think there was just so much happening in baseball this week that it deserved the extra attention. But look forward to having more football discussions in the next show.
Yeah, I think for this case, for everyone, thank you for your patience. A lot of great things. Yeah, like we said, baseball's hot right now. We want to keep talking about it. That's what's going on in this game. So keep in mind of that. We have more coming up in the future. I think that the virtual so far has been a pretty good success. So we thank you all for putting up. I know I look better on Brad's camera, but it is what it is.
I'll get Ryan hooked up on the home setup too. Don't worry.
Thank you. Maybe get me something back here. Actually, I'm in the process of making like a man cave. This is not the man cave here.
Okay.
Where I can put up. I got some really cool stuff. Tonight was not, hey, it's just glass case of emotion. But for everyone, before we get out here, I'll do Brad's line real quick. Actually, it's like, subscribe. What else do I got, Brad?
Hit that notification bell and go follow us over on our social media platforms as well. I would say that we're probably the most active on Twitter. So go ahead and follow us over at Twitter at Ryan Ripken and at Own the Chaos. Guys, thanks so much for the support. We certainly appreciate it. And look forward to doing more live streams. So definitely hit that notification bell. I think that's going to be something that we kind of figure out on the fly. So just stay tuned and things are pretty fluid. So you're not going to miss it. So have those notifications set so you guys don't miss a thing.
I love it. All right, everyone. Hey, as always, great day to have a day. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday night and Friday going into the weekend. And stay tuned and we'll talk soon.
Love it. Thanks, guys. See you in the next one.